Shalom WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah talk. This week in synagogue we will be reading the double portion of Acharei Mot-Kedoshim. And after Shabbat this weekend it will be Mother's Day. So I thought it would be a nice time to talk about the values we learn from mothers in the Torah. Often mothers are not even mentioned, like in the parsha. In the first parsha we'll read, Acharei Mot, we read of the terrible death of Nadav and Avihu, of Aaron's two sons. And we hear how Moshe says sort of words of comfort to Aaron, and Aaron is silent. We don't hear more. What that silence indicates is the topic of much commentary and thought, and if Moses said the right things. One person we don't hear anything about, maybe oddly, is the mother of Nadav and Avihu, Aaron's wife, Elisheva ben Aminadav. Elisheva bat Aminadav. Elisheva is not mentioned here in this paragraph. She's a quiet character in the Torah. And the Torah leaves her out, her reaction to the death of her sons out of this whole narrative. The day that this happens, the tabernacle was being dedicated for the first time, and people were rejoicing, and maybe Nadav and Avihu were rejoicing a little too much. One theory is that, one comment is that they are struck down because they went in drunk to offer the dedicating sacrifices. And that kind of revelry was too much. Where the Torah is silent about Elisheva's reaction, the Midrash in Vayikra Rabbah, a very interesting Midrash, fills in the blanks. It tells us that on the day of the dedication of the tabernacle, Elisheva bat Aminadav did not rejoice in the world when she saw, first of all, it says she saw 5 crowns in one day. What were the 5 crowns she saw in one day? Her brother-in-law was king, Moses. Her brother, Aaron, a prince. Her brother was Nachshon ben Aminadav, who was a prince. Her husband was high priest, and her 2 sons, deputy high priests. And her grandson, Pinchas, would be the priest appointed for war. 5 crowns she saw. What more could a woman hope for? What more could a person ask for? That they should be in a family with such yichus. Presumably in the patriarchal society that is the Torah, to have the men in her lives so well connected, and all of them connected to her, would place her in a role of a very high power herself. She would be, you would think, happy, but the Midrash tells us that she was not happy when she saw the 5 crowns. Because her sons were sacrificed and burned, her joy was transformed into mourning, and she never rejoiced again in this world. Aaron may, as we read, go on about the sacrifices and the dedication. He's quiet and he does his job. But Elisheva, she is inconsolable at the death of her children, unable to move forward. So much so that the Torah kind of leaves her out of the narrative, that her grief, maybe, this is my own thought, but maybe her grief was too sacred to be written into the narrative here. Just as her grief is too sacred to be written into the narrative, it's too sacred for the rabbis of this Midrash to leave it out. What is it about a mother that the Midrash is trying to tell us? That there's something about the focus on relationships, on family, on protection, on connection, that is, as far as the tradition seems to be concerned, unique to mothers. This may be why when we say a Misha Berach prayer of healing for those who are ill, we use the mother's name, meaning so my name, Moshe Tzvi ben Avram Yaakov, usually would be how it would be said, Moshe Tzvi, the son of Avram Yaakov, my father. But if God forbid I needed a prayer of healing, you would say Moshe Tzvi ben Yonina. using the mother's name instead of the father's name. Why? There's just something about a mother that when we're calling on God's mercy, when we're calling for safety and salvation and calling on the connections of those relationships, it is a maternal idea that we are calling upon. That's what our tradition is telling us. In that same midrash, it uses another example of the same thing. Where does Elisheva get the model of grief and mourning for her children? That no matter that her husband is still the high priest, her brother-in-law is still the king or the prophet, the leader, no matter that her other sons will now be the deputy high priest, no matter that her grandson Pinchas will be the priest in charge of war, none of that matters. She is grief-stricken forever because of her loss. Things don't balance out that way. That's what Elisheva represents. The Midrash calls us back to Sarah and reports that when Isaac got back from the binding of Isaac, she said, "Where have you been?" He said, "My father took me up the mountain and tried to kill me." And it says that at that moment she cried out 6 cries, like the blast of the shofar. And before they were even completed, she died from her grief that her son had been in these dire straits. And that's why right after the Akedah, the next thing the Torah reports is Sarah's death. Again, this idea, the Midrash highlighting that there is something special about maternity, about a mother's love. And again, I don't think this is necessarily a gendered statement, meaning that there are times when fathers channel maternal instincts and mothers channel paternal instincts, and when people who have no children step in, no biological children step in with those kinds of instincts. But the idea of motherhood is just so beautiful, and in our tradition is just so valuable. And so I wanted to raise it up for this Mother's Day, even through this terrible story of grief and woe. Unfortunately, right now we lack not stories of grief and woe. And we've seen amazing mothers step forward with incredible fortitude to speak on behalf of their children who are in danger or who have died. And it's been heart-wrenching, it's been gut-wrenching, it's been awful. And it's also been inspiring. And it's also been a reminder to us of why people are the most important thing. Even if we're dedicating a house for God in the desert, even if we're building beautiful countries, and even if we are going about sacred work in the world, it all doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot if we're not concentrating on the people we love, protecting them, holding them close, spending time, spending moments of sincere and honest togetherness. That, I think, is what is represented by motherhood. That is the great gift of Elisheva bat Aminadav. And as I hold it sacred in my heart, I wish to all the mothers out there, Happy Mother's Day. I've often been told that Thanksgiving is the most Jewish holiday, but the most Jewish, non-Jewish holiday. I think maybe it just might be Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, everyone, and Shabbat Shalom.